I'm Michael Crossan, and this is the review of the 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Sport. So we take a look at this new Crosstrek. You might be saying, and I said it myself, this looks just like a 2024 Crosstrek. They're both third generation, so largely they are the same, but the big news here is that there is a new engine. It makes more power, more torque, and that's really a good thing when it comes to a Crosstrek. So we bought this 2026 Subaru Crosstrek Sport in Sapphire Blue Pearl. Final assembly point is Lafayette, Indiana. It has a base price of $30,625. And ours does have a few options, including the rear bumper cover, license plate brackets, splash guards, wheel locks, and floor liners. There's a destination and delivery charge of $1,420, and that puts our total purchase price at $32,819. So the big news here is what's under the hood. The 2-liter is out, and all of them are going to have a 2.5-liter. That's now the engine of choice. It makes more horsepower, about 180. It makes more torque. In this case, more is definitely better. It's not going to suffer too badly. The EPA's estimated combination city and highway mileage is 29 miles per gallon, so that's not too bad, and it runs on regular gas, which is nice. It still has a CVT transmission. It's not the greatest thing. It's not the worst thing either. It's better than all those kind of old school CVTs. We'll talk about that more when we drive the car here in a little bit. And of course, you still get Subaru's legendary symmetrical all-wheel drive, so you can still go out and do Subaru things if you want to. So we chose to buy the Sport trim, but I would be negligent if I didn't mention that there's a whole bunch of trims available, 5 in fact, from base model all the way up to Wilderness, and there's about a span of $7,000 there in terms of starting price. So if you're interested in one of these, they basically have one for all kinds of different budget ranges. And there is sort of another variant of this available. In 2026, there's a Crosstrek Hybrid. Now, there was a hybrid before. It was a little different. It wasn't the best system. This new one is quite a bit better. And don't worry, we bought one, and we're going to be testing it as well. One of our other mics will be doing the video on that, and you can see it right back there. So Crosstreks have been out for a while, and we've come to learn that they're basically just lifted Imprezas, which is a good thing. It gives you a little bit more of a commanding view, you get a little more ground clearance, you don't feel so invisible out on the road as you would in an Impreza. This is the Sport model, so it's got a few things going on. Yellow Sport badges, it's got this gold kind of body trim all over the vehicle. I think it actually looks pretty good, but I can see how some people might not like it. And then larger 18-inch wheels. And as we know, as you go up in wheel size, it does negatively impact ride quality, but a spoiler alert here, it's not so bad. So one nice thing about the Crosstrek is that it sits up a little higher, and it does make getting in and out just a little bit easier because it raises the overall seat height. The door opening isn't all that big. I'm probably about 6'1", so I'm kind of the maximum height you'd want in this car. This one doesn't have a sunroof, which is nice because I get extra headroom. And to be honest with you, the seat is all the way down. It's manual forward and back, and the backrest and all that, but there is some height adjustment here, at least on the driver's seat. There is not on the passenger seat, and I'm just able to get comfortable because the steering wheel does move in and out and up and down. That sounds kind of terrible. But, you know, I can get myself set up in a reasonably comfortable driving position. But overall, I really like the steering wheel. It is leather wrapped, and it feels pretty good. We got some easy to read buttons here and a traditional gear shifter, which is always a win. So screens are the thing that we're going to have to deal with on every car. I'll turn that on. It's going to take a moment. Down here on the console, we have an old school 12-volt power plug. That's nice to see. We have honest-to-goodness rocker switches for our heated seats, both high and low for the front. That's awesome. We do have a wireless phone charger, which has its own power button, which is kind of cool because if you throw keys and other stuff in there, you don't want that on because it works off of essentially magnetism. However, I will say, I had this car all weekend, had my phone in that thing the entire time, and not once was I able to get it to charge. Didn't get any kind of warning messages, and there's actually like a little bit of a vibration that happens. Don't know what's up with that. Don't know if it's ours or if that's how they all are, but it's definitely something we're going to have to look into. We got a couple of USB ports down here. That's always nice to see. And I have no idea what happened to our screen. I had turned it on. I saw it come on and it went off. There we go. So this center screen is basically your everything in this car. All of your climate control functions happen through here. Temperature, your modes, on and off, fan speed at the bottom. And then you have all your infotainment, navigation, radio, all your settings are in here. It's just a little bit slow. Not crazy slow, but I wish it was just a little bit faster. It's particularly slow when you start the vehicle up. You know, get yourself belted in, your phone is maybe connecting, you throw it in reverse, it takes a moment for the backup camera to come on. The whole thing just, I wish it was executed a little bit better. But overall, I do think it looks kind of nice. It's not overly bright at night or anything like that, but it is just not the most pleasant thing to use. We do get some physical controls here, though. A volume knob and a power knob. We do get a tuning knob, and then we have front and rear defrost along with our dual zone climate. We actually get temp buttons that are physical buttons, and that's really nice. If you're wearing gloves or something, you just want to dial in that temperature, you can do that on those buttons, so we really like that. And then beyond our steering wheel is the instrument cluster, which actually has 2 really traditional gauges, which is really nice, and then the center is a digital display. There's not an overwhelming amount of information in there. It kind of gives you just what you need. You can change a couple of pages, but really, I don't mind it. That's really all you need. I don't want anything more, and it keeps it pretty basic and simple, and I appreciate that. So the Crosstrek isn't the most luxurious thing out there, but everything feels nice. It feels, solid. It feels well built. None of it's really premium stuff. Again, I think just it comes back to utilitarian. It's probably pretty easy to clean, and I think it'll last a good long time. The seats has an interesting pattern on this. It's kind of like a Nomex material. It's not really cloth. It's certainly not leather or vinyl. The gold accents, I think, kind of break things up, and it looks sharp. So the rear seat, the opening's a little tight. It's not bad, though. Have to duck just a little bit to get in. But once you're in, it's actually surprisingly roomy. There's plenty of headroom. I'm sitting up straight. My hair is just touching the roof, but in a back seat, I don't mind that so much. I'm actually sitting behind myself, and I have more than, a hand's width of room here. I can even stretch my legs out a little bit. It's actually surprising for being a subcompact SUV. I could definitely sit back here for a couple hours. I think 2 adults could sit back here fine. But teenagers, smaller children out of seats could absolutely sit 3 wide. 1 adult, 1 car seat. I could see that happening. I don't think you're going to get 3 car seats back here, though. What there isn't a lot of is stuff. There's not much for your passengers to do back here. We do have a USB A and C on the back of the console. Otherwise, that's about it. We even only get 1 seat back pocket behind the passenger seat. And yeah, that's about it. So the Crosstrek, being an SUV / kind of station wagon thing, does have a hatch here that opens. It's non-powered, but honestly, it's not a problem. It's very light and it opens nice and high, no danger of hitting my head. It does come with this cargo shade. It's retractable and removable. We'll get that out of our way. We did get the rear bumper cover is what they call it. Doesn't mean it's the actual bumper. It's just this piece here that will help with scratches and things like that as you're loading things in and out. There is a cargo light. Otherwise, the seats fold if you need some extra room, and that's about what we got going on. We got to have the spare tire, though. So underneath the optional floor cover here, that lifts up, and we actually have a spare tire. It's not a full-size spare, but it's nice to have a spare tire. We have a jack and some tools. There's no real additional storage down there, but to be honest, I'd rather have this spare tire and the tool set versus the extra cargo space. So driving this updated Crosstrek, straight away you can absolutely feel the extra horsepower. It now makes 180. That's about 30 more than the 2-liter model. I wish I had about 215, if I'm honest, but the 180 gets you down the road pretty well. It does have a CVT transmission, which kind of sort of has a negative connotation to it, but it's not as bad as you might think. All right, so we're going to take off from a stop here, and we'll get to see this new increased power. And we've set off pretty well, pretty reasonable. A little loud. I'm having to talk a little louder, I think, to overcome the 5,000 RPM we're doing here. And it is a CVT, but it simulates shifts, which I think adds a lot to the overall experience. I'm going to slow down, that way you can hear me over the wind noise that has come in at about 70 miles an hour. The downside here is the CVT. It is a little bit elastic, and what I mean by that is as you accelerate, the engine revs up, and it just takes a moment till you kind of set off and go anywhere. But around town, it's actually pretty enjoyable to drive. The place where you really notice it is now in passing. We're rolling along at about 30 miles an hour, and I'm going to put my foot down, and I'll kind of signal once the vehicle actually starts to accelerate. So here we go. Foot is to the floor, and now we're accelerating. Again, not a big deal, but there is a delay, and it's just something you kind of want to plan for. I did find on the highway, you end up having to work the gas pedal quite a bit to sort of keep the vehicle in some RPM range and kind of keep that forward momentum going. One nice thing is, though, you do get paddles behind the steering wheel here, and if you want to use those, granted a CVT, there aren't gears, but you can kick it down a gear or two, and it brings your engine RPM up, and it just makes the whole experience a little bit more responsive, and that is nice, and I did find myself using the paddles during the kind of last week that I've been driving the car. Otherwise, the car feels very solid and secure. It handles surprisingly well because I think of this as an SUV, but you got to remember it is based on the Impreza, which is just this little small nimble car, and this is basically that just lifted. So it turns into the corner really well, it rotates, get a decent amount of feedback through the steering wheel, which can be nice when you're on back roads, or if you are doing a little bit of off-roading, maybe you're on some gravel. It's exactly what you want, but it's not so much that you get tired or it beats you up. Something you might get tired of though, there is a bit of road noise, some wind noise, and some tire noise, and the faster you go, it does get worse. It's pretty tolerable up to about 55 miles an hour, and from that point, it definitely gets louder the faster you go. I did find though that just clicking the radio volume up a couple of notches does sort of help eliminate the annoyance of it. This being the sport trim, it does have 18-inch wheels and tires, and we know that that affects the ride quality. Truth be told, it's not terrible as we head down the ride road here, but it's not all bad. Little bit of impact makes it through, but overall the chassis and the suspension does a really nice job absorbing big size bumps, little size bumps. It's actually a pretty pleasant place to be, all things considered, given the sort of size and the short wheelbase of the vehicle. So the Crosstrek isn't an overly large car, but I've got a pretty decent sized windshield in front of me, pretty good front over visibility. The pillars aren't overly thick. We do get these small windows here that actually give me a lot of visibility in front of the side mirrors. I really do like that, especially in like parking lots and around town and things like that. It gives you just a lot of extra lines of sight. The side mirrors aren't huge, but they do a decent enough job. Same thing with the rear view mirror. It shows basically everything out the back glass. I can see the rear headrests just a little bit. When I do a head check over my shoulder, the passenger seat does block a lot of that rear window, but not the whole thing, and I can see quite enough between the side mirror and then doing that head check. And on the driver's side head check, I'm actually really decent visibility, and I don't even really see my own headrest, so that's nice to see. The Crosstrek does come with a whole host of safety features. However, there are a couple that we do wish it had as standard. They are available as an option, and that would be blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, along with automatic emergency braking from the rear. Would be nice if all of those were standard, but they are available if it is something that is within your price point and that you choose to option on your car. Subaru knows that Subaru buyers are loyal. If you've owned one Subaru, you've probably had more than one, in fact, and it doesn't mean they phoned this one in. I really think that they put a lot of work into this, even though on the surface it does seem to be the same as all the other Crosstreks that have come before it. But the big deal for 2026 is that base motor is now the 2.5 liter, and that really just sort of enhances the overall pleasure and experience driving the vehicle. In fact, I even feel a little safer in it when merging in traffic. It's really an evolution. It's not a whole blank slate redo of the car. And if you've owned one of these in the past, you're thinking about getting the new one, I think you would be very happy and quite frankly at home here inside the Crosstrek. For more on the 2026 Subaru Crosstrek and other subcompact SUVs, check out cr.org.